if the game is all about remembering that love is the most important, that's how you win in this game of life. Everything else is an illusion. So I mean, you and I have been talking about this for years. And I know people are like, go back in the 60s, or, you don't know what's going on in the world, and get your head out of the sand, or, life isn't like that. But if I think that most people don't want to take responsibility, let alone have the capacity to understand that if you can just imagine that you are so powerful to create your own reality, what would you do differently? And it's not that difficult when we embrace that piece.
I think the difficulty though is the programming that's around all of us, right? And by programming for the watching and listening audience, what I mean is, you know, think about our minds as a computer, and how often or not so often do you upgrade your software? And how often does your software get influenced by outer, things on the website, viruses or things of that nature? And basically, anytime you're watching television or you're consuming mainstream content, or you're watching films, television, playing video games, anything, or just going to school, everything around us influences us. Obviously, we know that. But what it's also doing is it's programming stories and ideas into our belief systems, right? And you say this all the time, Lisa, where it's like how, you do something enough and then it becomes a habit, right? And things can start to, the more they're repeated in your reality, the more they become a belief, or they become a habit. They become something that just solidifies, doesn't make it true, doesn't make it the absolute reality, just makes it a story, just makes it a part of this concept, this programming that we all have, that we're still all a part of. My life is going to be continually deprogramming and reprogramming, so it's just like it's a journey.
Absolutely. And I think I'm always going back to the Matrix, is the moment where they realized that they were plugged in. And can we get to a point where we can unplug and always be unplugged from the Matrix? Now that to me is kind of my own lifelong journey. And I don't know about you, Chris, but I'm like, when I get upset or I feel myself moving through an emotion, I'm immediately aware of, where's the mirror? What's going on inside? This isn't about anybody else except for me. And I think it would be so amazing to get to a point, which I feel like can happen in this lifetime, where I am truly unplugged, where I don't get triggered by anything in the past, because I see it all so clearly in this matrix. I see it and I can see it, but I'm still affected by it.
Like my first thought was like, perhaps when you're fully unplugged, it's when you've transcended the third dimensional reality altogether. But then I was like, no, hold on. Like, ascended masters, certainly in in our history, like the Buddhas and Jesuses and the Krishnas and all these other beings, let's say, certainly figured that out, or already came into this reality figured out. Although I guess they all had a journey. Actually, all of them had pretty incredible journeys of self-realization that brought them into the frequency and the ability to kind of like transcend this third dimensional reality, which gave them all these we call superhero powers, right, or special abilities and ways of navigating this reality that were unlike everyone else around them. But I guess there's also another component, and this gets into like another whole concept of like the yuga cycles and cycles of consciousness on planet Earth. And for those of, again, watching and listening, if you're not familiar with the yuga cycles, It's the same as the age of the zodiac. It's the same as what Plato calls the great year. It's actually a 26,000 year cycle, or just under 26,000 years of a very long celestial cycle. And it actually follows the tilt of Earth's axis. And that tilt takes almost 26,000 years for it to do one full rotation. And for some reason, that affects the level of consciousness on planet Earth as well, a cyclical journey where you've got states of really high consciousness, meaning everyone on the planet is vibrating at a Jesus, at a Buddha, at a Krishna level. And then you have the lower part of the cycle, which we are actually just coming out of right now. And that's where everyone's vibrating at a level that we're all vibrating at kind of right now. Not all of us, but certainly, let's say, a majority of the beings on this planet are. And usually when you're in the low state of the cycle, that's when you're in a state of materialism, where you are almost completely disconnected from spirit, from consciousness. And at the opposite of that, on the, let's say, the golden age or the highest cycle of the Yuga cycle, then you're vibrating at a very, very high vibration that's very much transcended the third dimensional reality, is likely living in a fifth density or a fifth dimensional reality, and is of that full love, full connection, fully connected to spirit, fully connected to consciousness, source, everything like that. And so I also wonder how much of, I'm sure as on an individual level, we can always unplug and find that that way to transcend. However, it's going to be the most challenging in the state we're in right now, vibrationally speaking. Not impossible, but that's just kind of where we're at right now too.
Because of the collective?
Yeah, and because of the state of the planet, like again, it's in this lower cycle of actual, it's a frequency itself. So you're also working with or against the frequencies of the galaxy where our planet is currently on. And it's moving up. And we have all that. And I think what's more difficult, it's not that we can't connect with these with the cosmos and with consciousness at any time. We absolutely can. But I think it's the consciousness of everybody else on the planet, and certainly the powers that be that run this planet, that are in that lower state of control, dominance, materialism, lack of spirit, lack of love in a sense. And that's why we all feed off of a collective consciousness, and it might keep us more in a lower vibration. Just makes it a little more challenging. Not impossible, just a little bit more challenging in times like these.
So I'm curious as to where are we in that 26,000 year cycle?
It's a good question. I just did a podcast on my Ancient Mysteries on Earth channel maybe 2 months ago with a friend of mine who's really knowledgeable in the Yuga cycles. And he was saying that there's some debate, just like anything. Well, when did the cycle start, right? And who decides that? Well, yeah, there's a couple of theories that we actually left the bottom, let's call it the Iron Age, because it basically breaks down as, I like the more Western / Greek breakdown of it, which is Golden Age, Silver Age, Bronze Age, Iron Age. Golden Age, highest level of consciousness. Iron Age, lowest level of consciousness, which is where we're at right now. So we think, he thinks that we may have even left it almost 200 years ago, which you look at like the peak of like the end of it's like the start of a lot of colonialism, but it's kind of like the peak of that. And there's sort of almost like a peak of violence around maybe 150 years ago. That's very debatable though. And then there was more technology and more awakening through science and technology coming in the 1800s and 1900s. He thinks it could have been as long as 200 years ago, but the modern way of looking at it was 2012, the Mayan calendar, where everyone was freaking out about the end of the world. That was actually the end of the bottom part of the Yuga cycle, and now we're on the incline after 2012.